Ball thrown by former National Security Advisor John Bolton when he expressed a willingness to testify at the Senate impeachment trial. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell claims he has the votes he needs to set the ground rules for the trial without Democratic support and possibly without witnesses, including Bolton. Democrats were, of course, hoping that Bolton's announcement would sway enough vulnerable Republicans to vote in support of allowing witnesses. McConnell now says those matters will be dealt with after opening statements, which could, of course, theoretically mean never. So let's talk about all this. Nayyera, what chances do Democrats have to get witnesses, especially Bolton, once the trial starts?
Well, listen, the pressure that the Democrats are putting on is putting on a body that they don't directly control. So that's the Senate. It ultimately will be up to the senators and whatever pressure the American public. I will say, though, that Bolton not appearing before the House and now saying he's willing to appear for the Senate does open the door for someone like Chairman Schiff to say, OK, well, we want to invite you back. There's still some questions and there's continuing either investigations or whatever the reason is. But to bring Bolton in and have a deeper discussion about how Trump develops foreign policy and also what the engagement has been ongoing with Russia and Ukraine. So there's still an opportunity for the House here to bring John Bolton into this, but I don't think they could force anything out of the Senate.
So there's what should happen, and theoretically, let's just pause it for a second, Scott. You're close with McConnell. Theoretically, that Bolton should testify. Are you surprised at how much the Democrats have not been flooding the offices or the airwaves surrounding the Republicans who might be vulnerable, such as Susan Collins in Maine or Cory Gardner in Colorado or Martha McSally in Arizona, not pressuring them in any effective way?
No, I'm not surprised because the game here has been clear from the beginning. They don't really care about removing the president. They just care about using impeachment as a hyper-partisan political tool that they think will, score some points in the upcoming election. They never had a prayer, in my opinion, of leveraging, whatever that meant, anything against any of these Republicans. Look, these Republicans have eyes and ears. They can see what's going on here. And most of these senators have already formed an opinion about this, and that's not going to change. I mean, John Bolton, this issue today, he was so important. It's so important we hear from Bolton that they never even subpoenaed him in the House. And now they're on TV arguing that Mitch McConnell needs to drag him in. The whole thing has been ridiculous from start to finish.
Take a listen to a comment made by Senator Pat Roberts of Kansas. He's a friend of Bolton's, is a Republican. He made the point that Bolton's a private citizen. Theoretically, he can talk anytime he wants. Take a listen.
No reason that John Bolton can't just say something publicly right now. So I've never known him not to say something.
Yeah, I mean, this has been a bit of a bizarre sort of game of cat and mouse or Where's Waldo or Catch Me If You Can, whatever sort of reference you want to make to John Bolton. Essentially now saying I will testify if I get a subpoena, probably understanding that it's not likely that he's necessarily going to get a subpoena from the Senate. He can go before the cameras anytime. He can sit down with the television anchor like Jake Tapper and say all he wants to say.
Sure, come on over. Got a warm seat for you.
He obviously is on Twitter all the time as well. So it's unclear why he feels like he wants to do this.
So he said he was prepared to testify, which I interpret as being different than I will testify, because the point that was just made is right on. You can just write it all down and send it over in a letter. You could do anything, but he hasn't done that. And so I think he anticipates maybe if he did get a subpoena from anybody that the White House would then try to invoke executive privilege and there'd be a court fight and so on and so forth. So I actually looked at his statement a little differently than I think it's being interpreted today, which is prepared to testify is different than chomping at bit.
He also doesn't want to get caught up in that whole back and forth of who's standing for rule of law and who's getting in the way of rule of law. So by saying that he's willing to comply with the subpoena and come forward, he takes himself out of the conversation, which is ultimately Nancy Pelosi and Speaker saying they abided by rule of law. They want the Senate to do the same.
Chairman Rogers, forgetting the political maneuvering here, okay, and subpoenas and how, don't you want to just know what he has to say? As an American, don't you think it's of interest what John Bolton has to say?
Clearly, and I would have liked to have heard it through a reasonable, rational process. If they're going to impeach a president, the House should have done a thorough job, candidly.
You think that they were rushed?
They said they were rushed. They said, we're in a hurry. We got to get this done before Christmas. We got packages to buy and stuff to wrap. I mean, we're talking about the impeachment of a president and overturning the vote of 60 million people. That should not be taken lightly. Even if you think he's guilty, that to me means you go the extra mile. You don't shorten it up. I think what Bolton's doing is basically this. He's saying to the Senate, I completely agree with where you're going on this, hey, I'll come in and testify if you can make it happen, number one. He's trying to do two things. Tell the institutional national security folks out there, I did the right thing. I abided by executive privilege. Oh, by the way, Senate, United States Senate, I did say I would come in and testify for you all if you could make it happen.
Right.
I think this is just about preserving where he wants to go in the future. I don't think this is a serious, I'm ready to come up and drop the bomb and drop the mic and walk out and the president gets voted guilty. I just don't believe that. And again, the longer this goes, I went back to Michigan and I had some business in San Francisco over the holidays. I'll start with San Francisco because these were self-proclaimed anti-Trump Democrats who were telling me, I don't get this, all looks messy and it looks political. These are people who don't like Trump 20 minutes after they go to sleep and 20 minutes before they get up in the morning. And they were adamant about it. And my argument is the longer this goes, I think the more political it is and more of those kinds of folks you're going to rope into this notion like this is all just Washington, D.C. being Washington.
Everyone stick around. We got more to talk about coming up next. How Joe Biden today tried to seize on the Iran crisis and President Trump's decision to order a deadly strike. Stay with us.